Hello, this YouTube video aims to give stakeholders more information on the call for evidence on per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, in firefighting foams. You may have also heard of PFAS referred to as forever chemicals. This presentation is from HSC in our role as the agency for UK REACH. This presentation aims to give a brief update on the agency's work on PFAS in firefighting foam. It will cover how we've got to where we have and the scope of any potential restriction. I'll talk about the work we're currently undertaking and the information we're looking for as part of this. I'll explain why we're looking for this, who in particular we'd like to engage with, and what the information will be used for. Finally, I'll talk about the next stages of the process and how stakeholders can contribute. So where are we now and how do we get to this stage? The Regulatory Management Options Analysis, RMOA, on PFAS was published last year, which amongst other things recommended that it be appropriate to consider the preparation of restriction dossiers under UK REACH for PFAS. Given the information available and also given the potential for direct emission of large volumes to the environment, the use of PFAS in firefighting foams was prioritised for action first. HSC, as the agency for UK REACH, has now received a request to prepare an Annex 15 restriction dossier that will consider the manufacture, placing on the market and use of PFAS in firefighting foams. We received that request on the 5th of March from the DEFRA Secretary of State with the consent of ministers from Scotland and Wales. The restriction dossier that we will produce will include information on the hazard and risk, along with an assessment of alternatives and consider the need for further measures to manage the risk from PFAS in firefighting foams throughout their life cycle. I'll say a bit more about these points in the next few slides. What are the concerns behind the restriction request? The RMOA concluded that PFAS have a number of properties that together pose a concern to the environment and human health. The main concern is driven by the persistence, their so-called forever chemicals that can remain in the environment for a long period of time. This can either be the individual PFAS themselves or their degradation products. Along with this, there is a potential for a high level of mobility, leading to wide dispersal and potential contamination, including the water environment. There are uncertainties over the long-term adverse impacts to the environment and human health. We know these substances persist, but long-term studies and data are scarce for the majority of PFAS. On the basis of these concerns, the DEFRA Secretary of State considers that the use of PFAS in firefighting foams poses a reasonably foreseeable risk to the environment which is not adequately controlled and needs to be addressed. So the restriction process has started, but what is a restriction? Restriction is one measure we can use under UK REACH to manage the risks from a substance, or in this case, a group of substances. It can result in an outright ban on the manufacture, use and supply of the substance, or it can ban certain uses or introduce other requirements such as limiting the concentration of substances to be placed on the market, or limiting the use in certain types of articles such as substances in tyres. The restriction process generally starts with a request to HSC as the agency for UK REACH by an appropriate authority under UK REACH. These are the DEFRA Secretary of State or the Scottish or Welsh ministers. What does this request do? Well, it means that HSC, sometimes with the support of the Environment Agency, where there are environmental concerns, starts to produce a dossier of technical information in accordance with the criteria described in Annex 15 of UK REACH, hence the reference to an Annex 15 dossier. But it may be called a restriction dossier or just the dossier, or this bit of the process may be referred to as the dossier stage. As noted earlier, this is a technical dossier which will consider the hazards, uses, exposure, alternatives, impacts, etc. to justify as appropriate the need for any further action if we determine there is a risk that is not adequately controlled. To support the dossier development, we'll be looking to gather further information and engage with relevant stakeholders. One of the tools we will use to do this early in the process is by holding a call for evidence, where we invite stakeholders to make themselves known to us and to provide relevant evidence. And this is why we have put out this YouTube video as the call for evidence to help prepare the Annex 15 dossier on PFAS in firefighting foams is now live on the HSE website. And now this call for evidence is live, what type of information are we looking for? We want to identify relevant stakeholders that we can engage with during the development of the dossier. This includes, but is not limited to, those that make, formulate, import, distribute, or otherwise supply firefighting foams. We'd also like to hear from those that use firefighting foams or trade bodies and other associations that may have relevant information. Also, whilst we have tried to identify where these foams may be used, we would like to know we've captured all sectors and that stakeholders can recognise their industry and therefore their use. In particular, we'd like to gain GB specific information on the use of PFAS in these firefighting foams. For example, the quantities, what the products are, and any additional information on risk management which may be supplied with the product. We'd also like further information on the transition away from PFAS containing foams and the suitability of alternatives, including if something has been trialled and tested and was not suitable or effective, why was this the case? This information will be used as part of the evidence base in the Annex 15 dossier to support the risk assessment and the impact assessment. It will develop understanding of any potential adverse impacts or unintended consequences, allow an assessment of the suitability of alternatives, and overall will enable us to build and, as necessary, refine the options for any potential restriction. For example, considering any exemptions that might be necessary or the transitional periods required for any legislative changes to take effect. We are aware that there are certain classes of fire where effectiveness and availability of alternatives have been flagged as a particular concern, but please provide us with the details on this so we're able to use it. It will also allow us to build a network of people, companies we need to engage with and talk to in developing any restrictions. So what are the next stages? Having received the request on the 5th of March, as I said earlier, we have 1 year to produce the restriction dossier, and as noted, that will include engagement with relevant stakeholders both through the call for evidence or more directly. After this period, the restriction dossier will be published for a 6-month public consultation. This starts the second phase of the restriction process, which is the opinion development stage. During the opinion stage, we will engage with the independent experts on the REACH Independent Scientific Expert Pool, RICEP, who will, amongst other things, provide scrutiny and challenge of the work that we undertake. Information about the process and the stages, including when something is open for consultation, will be made available in the registry of restriction intentions available on our website. Finally, how can you as a stakeholder contribute to the process? As mentioned, in the first instance, stakeholders can respond to the call for evidence, whether to provide the information requested, additional evidence, or to make themselves known to us. We intend to hold meetings during the process to help stakeholders understand the work and to gather information as needed. Further information about this will again be made available in due course. There is also the option to become an accredited stakeholder organisation, where it will be possible to listen in to the Challenge Panel meetings and to ask questions in that forum. Information on becoming an accredited stakeholder organisation is available on our website. For anyone with evidence to provide, we'd strongly encourage that it is made available as early in the process as possible, so that it can be taken into account in the development of the restriction dossier. However, there will be further opportunities to engage throughout the process, e.g. during the public consultation on the dossier. As noted, information will be made available in the Restriction Registry of Intentions on the agency's website, through our e-bulletins and potentially through other channels at different points in the process to keep people up to date and informed. Last of all, you can find further information on the content of this YouTube video on HSC's website. These links can be found in the description box below this video, and as the slide says, please click Show More below the video to see these links. Thank you for watching, and please get in touch with us if you have useful and relevant information to support us in the development of the restriction dossier.